I wrote about it today from Puck News that the motivation, of course, for this is fear. They're terrified. And they went down to Mar-a-Lago and they did what they had to do to cover and protect their asses, which is not the thing to do if you hold a seat which you hold with importance in the hierarchy of American journalism. So Mika justified this by saying Zbigniew Brzezinski, a Pole, the Jimmy Carter era national security advisor, would have appreciated this because he was a diplomat and he would have processed this as a diplomatic act. Nonsense. He would have regarded it as a capitulant act. Mm-hmm. He would have seen it for exactly what it was. And it has created a profound crisis of credibility at MSNBC, which actually won't exist for very much longer at all as we enter into the early hours of the Trump administration.
Crisis of credibility. Let me just take a little bit of time to explain why Joe and Mika's act was so devastating, because that matters for what is going to happen next. So MSNBC had a particular ideology and worldview in the Trump era, which was very tightly controlled. This worldview had two central tenets. Number one, opposition to Trump is everything. Every issue position is defined in reaction to Trump. Every candidate is analyzed in relation to how they feel about Trump. This is how you end up with a bizarro world in which Liz Cheney's a hero because she hates Trump, and white working class men writ large are villains because they tend to vote for Trump. Number two, the way to defeat Trump runs through establishment Democratic politicians in collaboration with never Trump resistors. Any candidate or issue set that colors outside the lines of Clinton-style triangulation is to be rejected as unsafe and unserious for the task of defeating Donald Trump. If you didn't agree with those two central tenets, that Trump was everything and that the way to defeat Trump was establishment Democrats, you would not last long on that network to the extent that you made it there at all. In this calculus, Nicole Wallace, who cheered for the Iraq War, was a hero and welcome ideological fellow traveler, and someone, well, maybe like me, who thought the way to defeat fascism was through social democracy, just as FDR did, was a villain. The 1-2 punch of Trump winning and Joe and Mika's capitulation to Trump detonated both of those pillars, which were holding up the entire MSNBC universe. So their theory for how to beat Trump was totally broken, and their posture as brave resistance to Trump was utterly shattered. Trump destroyed their theory that establishment Democrat politics was the way to win, the key to electability. Kamala ran the platonic ideal of that MSNBC campaign. She ran to the center. She bragged about her Glock. She pivoted hard right on immigration. She even buried her own popular price gouging proposals and ran around the country with the likes of Liz Cheney, Bill Clinton, and Richie Torres. Now, the corporatists can run around all they want trying to blame the left for this campaign, but this was their candidate, their campaign, their tactics, their consultants, their media approach, all of it. They own it. And their theory that this establishment approach was the way to defeat Trump was so incontrovertibly destroyed that even people like Chris Murphy and David Brooks have been forced to admit, you know what, maybe, just maybe, Bernie had a little bit of a point. Joe and Mika's decision to run to Trump to bend the knee provided the death knell for the other pillar of the MSNBC worldview, that resistance to Trump is everything. If the network is no longer about opposing Trump, what is this network about at all? The whole thing, including the universe of heroes and villains and which issues matter and which don't, all of that depended on Trump as the ultimate final boss of politics. It's what could unify Joy Reid and Chris Hayes, who are more or less left liberals, with Republicans like Nicole Wallace and Joe Scarborough. Now Joe and Mika are running around talking about working on common ground with Donald Trump. What common ground could there be with a man that weeks ago they were calling literal Hitler? Unfortunately, as Adam Johnson writes, there are actually plenty of areas where Joe and Mika and other establishment Democrats may be happy to collaborate with Trump in all of the worst ways possible. After all, Morning Joe was as deranged as any program when it came to cracking down on pro-Palestine protesters, smearing them as anti-Semitic, demanding crackdowns on speech. Some Democrats already happily handing Trump power to dismantle any nonprofit group he deems to be supporting terrorism. Already, of course, we've seen Democrats accept the Trumpian worldview that pins the nation's ills on immigrants and seeks a brutal crackdown on migration. I'm sure they'll be happy to find common ground as well on social safety net cuts of the type contemplated by Elon. After all, Morning Joe is the same show that slobbered all over Paul Ryan and treated him like the golden boy of politics. I am quite confident Joe and Mika will also be happy to cheerlead the next war as well, since they've, I think, literally never seen a war they didn't think we should endlessly fight. And of course, they can find common ground in their obsession with power. Trump in having it, Joe and Mika in orbiting, flattering, and groveling at its feet. Now, whether their show even continues in the new post-spinoff world in order to explore all of this copious common ground, well, that's another question, since already, even as the shows continue, in truth, only rubble remains after the ideological underpinnings have collapsed. Now, if MSNBC was actually a liberal outlet, I would experience its death as a loss. After all, liberalism as an ideology has plenty of failings, but also some strengths. Liberal journalism has continued to make important contributions in the Trump years, and in the absence of anything approaching a mainstream anti-capitalist media, liberalism serves an important role as an adversarial force towards Trump himself and Trumpism as an ideology. Sometimes, too, genuinely brave commentary did also slip through the cracks on MSNBC. For example, it was the only place where you could find any significant criticism of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. But MSNBC's goal was not to advance a liberal ideology. It was to advance and protect a corrupt Democratic Party elite. And that's the reason why there is very little to mourn in their death. It's bitterly ironic that the very network most centered around defeating Trump did the most to grease the skids for his ascent by blocking the Bernie left populist movement, most equipped to actually rival Trump's ideological project. They wanted to beat Trump and protect their executives' class interests. Those two goals were mutually exclusive, and when it came down to it, the goal of protecting their class interests was vastly more important to them than the goal of defeating Trump. Now, the path forward for media, to me, kind of mirrors that of the country at large. Most likely, everything is just going to continue to get worse. That's the most likely outcome. The gutting of mainstream outlets, rather than leading to some flourishing of vibrant, honest, courageous, independent media, instead leads to a bunch of even more shamelessly corrupt, sycophantic slop. As liberals brush themselves off and look around, they could easily be consumed by a liberal version of the same deranged conspiracy nonsense and partisan cheerleading that right-wing influencers find so much money and success peddling. As trust in mainstream institutions faded, charlatans poured in. It feels like we're plunging deeper into a post-reality world, and liberals gave us a preview in Russiagate of how easily they could be swept up by fantasy and delusion. But Trump's win has also created a possibility for something new and better that wasn't there before. Without the liberal establishment media enforcers, what could grow organically left of center that might effectively rival Trumpism? What would that look like? What candidates could gain traction? What issues could be championed? What media outlets could gain purchase, traction, genuine sway? MSNBC was the central weapon for convincing liberals that caring about things like, healthcare, unions, wages, housing, that all of that was a luxury. That wanting a genuinely democratic process to select a candidate was pure frivolity, all distractions, which could hobble the party in their quest to defeat the ultimate bad guy, Trump. Now, as it turns out, delivering for people materially and modeling a commitment to democracy were critical in that fight for democracy against Trump. And if not for MSNBC's years of gaslighting and manipulation, I'm pretty sure that would have been obvious, and now, perhaps, it will be. Although in Trump's business career, he was a builder, in politics, he really knows how to destroy. Might something better be built in the rubble? Well, we've got no choice now but to find out. And Emily, it really is in a sense an end of an era.
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Crystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.